The dust on her cracked lips tasted like death itself, and Victoria Prescott wondered if this God-forsaken crossroads would be the last thing she ever saw before the desert claimed her completely. She sat at the junction where two dirt roads met, creating an X in the middle of nowhere between Panamint, California, and the next settlement, 40 miles east. The year was 1883, and the Mojave Desert showed no mercy to those foolish enough to traverse it unprepared. Her feet were bare, bloodied from walking, the soles torn and blistered beyond recognition. The shoes she had started with 3 days ago had fallen apart completely, the cheap leather disintegrating under the relentless sun and sharp stones. Her dress, once a respectable gray cotton, now hung on her frame in tatters, stained with sweat and dust. She had not eaten in 4 days. The canteen she had carried was empty, discarded a mile back when she realized the weight of carrying it exceeded its uselessness. Victoria was 21 years old, though she felt ancient in this moment. She had fled an arranged marriage in Sacramento, a union her father had orchestrated with a silver mine owner twice her age, a cruel man with wandering hands and whiskey breath. Her mother had died 2 years prior, leaving her vulnerable to her father's schemes. He owed gambling debts, and Victoria was the currency he used to settle them. So she had run, taking what little money she had saved as a seamstress and buying passage on a stagecoach heading south. She had planned to reach Los Angeles, start a new life where no one knew her, where she could work honestly and live freely. But the stagecoach had been robbed outside of Panamint. The bandits had taken everything of value, including the horses, leaving the passengers stranded. The driver and guard had been shot, though not fatally, and the other passengers had banded together, deciding to walk back to Panamint. Victoria had started with them, but her shoes had given out, and she could not keep pace. She told them to go ahead, that she would follow. That had been yesterday morning. Or was it the morning before? Time had become fluid, unreliable. Now she sat at this crossroads, unable to walk another step. The sun was beginning its descent toward the horizon, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple that would have been beautiful if she had the capacity to appreciate beauty. All she could think about was water, food, shade. The basic elements of survival that she had taken for granted her entire life. She heard the horse before she saw it. The rhythmic clip-clop of hooves on packed earth, moving at a steady pace. She tried to lift her head to call out, but her throat was too dry, her voice nothing but a rasp. She managed to raise one hand, a feeble gesture that she hoped would be visible. The rider came around the bend in the road, materializing from the heat shimmer like an apparition. He was tall in the saddle, wearing a wide-brimmed hat that cast his face in shadow. As he drew closer, he must have spotted her because he immediately urged his horse into a faster gait, closing the distance between them in seconds. He dismounted in one fluid motion, his boots hitting the ground with a solid thud. He was at her side immediately, dropping to one knee beside her. Victoria found herself looking up into a face that was sun-bronzed and handsome, with concerned brown eyes and a strong jaw covered in several days' worth of stubble. He appeared to be in his middle 20s, with the lean, muscular build of someone who made his living through physical labor. "My God," he said, his voice rough with shock. "How long have you been out here?" Victoria tried to answer but could only manage a croak. He understood immediately, reaching for the canteen that hung from his belt. He uncorked it with practiced ease and brought it to her lips, tilting it carefully. "Slow," he instructed. "Just small sips. Too much too fast and you will make yourself sick." The water was warm from the day's heat, but it was the most glorious thing Victoria had ever tasted. She wanted to gulp it down to drain the entire canteen, but he was careful, giving her only small amounts at a time. After several sips, he pulled it back. "More," she managed to whisper. "In a minute," he said. "Let that settle first." His eyes traveled down to her feet, and she saw his expression darken. "What happened to your shoes?" "Fell apart," she said, her voice still barely audible. "Stagecoach was robbed, been walking." His jaw tightened. "The robbery outside Panamint, that was 3 days ago." "You have been out here for 3 days." She nodded weakly. He cursed under his breath, a creative string of words that would have made her blush under different circumstances. He gave her more water, then stood and walked back to his horse. The animal was a beautiful bay gelding, well cared for and equipped with worn but quality tack. He pulled a cloth-wrapped bundle from his saddlebag and returned to her side. "Can you eat?" he asked, unwrapping what turned out to be jerky and hardtack. "Yes," Victoria said, reaching for it with trembling hands. He broke off a small piece of the jerky and handed it to her. "Slow," he reminded her again. "Your stomach has been empty too long." She forced herself to chew slowly, though every instinct screamed at her to stuff the food into her mouth. The jerky was tough and salty, and it was delicious. He watched her carefully, giving her more small pieces at intervals, along with more water. As the immediate desperation of thirst and hunger began to ease, Victoria became more aware of her situation and her rescuer. He had kind eyes, she realized, despite the hardness that frontier life had etched into his features. There was something gentle in the way he tended to her, something that spoke of genuine concern rather than opportunism. "What is your name?" she asked after a while, her voice growing stronger. "Marcus Quinn," he replied. "I run cattle between here and the Nevada border. I was heading into Panamint for supplies when I spotted you." He paused. "What is yours?" "Victoria Prescott." She hesitated, then added, "I am grateful you came along when you did. I do not think I would have lasted much longer." Marcus's expression was grim. "You would not have. This is no place to be stranded, especially without water or proper footwear." He glanced at her torn dress, and she saw him carefully avert his eyes from where the fabric had ripped across her shoulder. "We need to get you to town, get you cleaned up and properly fed, and those feet need tending." "I have no money," Victoria said quietly, shame coloring her cheeks. "The bandits took everything." "Did not ask if you had money," Marcus said simply. He stood and walked back to his horse again, this time pulling out a pair of his own boots from his saddlebag. They were scuffed and well-worn but still serviceable. He brought them back to her. "These will be too big, but they are better than nothing. Let me look at your feet first." Victoria wanted to protest, to maintain some shred of dignity, but she was too exhausted and too desperate. She extended her feet, wincing as Marcus examined them with a practiced eye. He pulled out a relatively clean handkerchief from his pocket and, using some of his precious water, cleaned the worst of the blood and dirt away. Then he tore strips from his spare shirt, which he had also retrieved from his saddlebag, and wrapped her feet as best he could. "This will help with the rubbing," he explained as he worked, "though those cuts are going to need proper doctoring." When he was done, he helped her pull on his boots. They were indeed too large, but with her feet wrapped, they stayed on well enough. The leather was soft from wear, and Victoria felt tears prick her eyes at this simple kindness from a stranger. Marcus helped her to her feet, steadying her when she swayed. "Easy," he said. "You are weak. We will go slow." He guided her to his horse and, with surprising gentleness for such a rough-looking man, lifted her onto the saddle. She had ridden before, though not often, and never in such a compromised state. He swung up behind her, his arms coming around her to grasp the reins. She felt the solid warmth of his chest against her back, and for the first time in days she felt safe. "It is about 8 miles to Panamint," Marcus said, his voice close to her ear. "We should make it before full dark if we keep a steady pace. You just hold on and rest if you can." Victoria nodded, too overwhelmed to speak. As the horse began moving, the rhythmic gait threatened to lull her into unconsciousness, but she fought it, afraid that if she let go, she might fall. Marcus must have sensed her struggle because his arm tightened slightly around her waist, holding her more securely. "I have got you," he said quietly. "You can rest. I will not let you fall." This time, Victoria did not fight it. She let her head rest back against his shoulder and closed her eyes, trusting this stranger who had appeared at her crossroads like an answer to a prayer she had been too parched to voice. The ride to Panamint passed in a haze for Victoria. She drifted in and out of awareness, conscious of Marcus's steady presence behind her, the patient gait of the horse, the gradual cooling of the air as the sun completed its descent. When she opened her eyes fully again, they were entering the outskirts of town, and oil lamps were being lit in windows. Panamint was a rough mining town, born of the silver strike that had drawn fortune seekers from across the country. The main street was lined with false-fronted buildings. Saloons, general stores, a blacksmith, a livery stable, and various other establishments that catered to miners and drifters. It was not a gentle place, but it was civilization, and Victoria had never been so glad to see the signs of human habitation. Marcus guided his horse directly to a building with a sign that read, "Doc Patterson, Physician." He dismounted and tied his horse to the hitching post, then reached up to help Victoria down. Her legs nearly buckled when her feet touched the ground, but Marcus caught her, supporting her weight effortlessly. "Can you walk?" he asked. "With help," Victoria managed. He kept his arm around her waist and helped her up the steps to the doctor's office. The door was unlocked, and they entered to find a gray-haired man sitting at a desk, reading by lamplight. He looked up as they entered, his expression shifting from mild annoyance at the interruption to professional concern as he took in Victoria's condition. "Good Lord," the doctor said, rising quickly. "Bring her to the examination room." Marcus guided Victoria through a doorway into a small room with an examination table. He helped her sit on it, and the doctor immediately began his assessment, his hands gentle but efficient as he checked her pulse, looked at her eyes, examined her wrapped feet. "How long has she been without food and water?" the doctor asked Marcus. "She said 3 days since the stagecoach robbery, but I think she had little before that. I gave her some water and jerky on the trail, small amounts." "Good," the doctor said. He looked at Victoria. "I am Dr. Patterson." "Can you tell me your name, Miss Victoria Prescott?" she said. "Well, Miss Prescott, you are severely dehydrated and malnourished, and these feet are going to need careful treatment to avoid infection. But I think you will recover fully with rest and proper care." He turned to Marcus. "She needs to stay somewhere she can be monitored for the next few days. The hotel is no place for a woman alone in her condition. Does she have family in town?" "No," Victoria said quickly. "I have no one." The doctor frowned, clearly troubled by this information. Marcus was quiet for a moment, then said, "My ranch is about 2 miles outside of town. My sister lives there with me. She helps keep house. Miss Prescott could stay there under my sister's chaperonage until she is recovered." Victoria looked at him in surprise. "I cannot impose on you any further. You have already done so much." "It is not an imposition," Marcus said firmly. "And frankly, there is not a better option. The boarding house in town is run by Mrs. Chen, and she is already caring for 3 other women. The hotel is full of miners and gamblers. My ranch has space, and my sister Martha would be happy for the company." Dr. Patterson nodded approvingly. "That seems like the best solution. I will treat her feet now and give you supplies to change the dressings. She will need to stay off her feet as much as possible for at least a week, longer if infection sets in. Lots of liquids, regular meals, but nothing too heavy at first. Victoria wanted to protest further, but the truth was she had no alternative. She had no money, no possessions, no friends or family within hundreds of miles. This man who had saved her life was now offering her shelter and care, and pride was a luxury she could not afford. "Thank you," she said to Marcus, meeting his eyes. "I will find a way to repay you." "No repayment necessary," Marcus said. "Just focus on getting well." Dr. Patterson shooed Marcus out of the examination room while he cleaned and properly dressed Victoria's feet. The process was painful, and she bit her lip to keep from crying out as he removed debris from the deeper cuts and applied what he called carbolic acid to prevent infection. He wrapped each foot in clean bandages, then gave her a draught of something bitter that he said would help her sleep and keep fever at bay. When he was done, he helped her to a small waiting area where Marcus stood by the window. Marcus turned when they entered, and something in his expression softened when he saw her. "I will need to examine her again in 3 days," Dr. Patterson told Marcus, handing him a bundle of supplies. "Change the dressings twice daily, keep the wounds clean. If you see any red streaks, swelling, or if she develops a fever, bring her back immediately." Marcus took the supplies and nodded. "Understood. And make sure she eats regularly but small amounts at first. Her stomach needs to adjust." "I will make sure of it," Marcus assured him. Dr. Patterson turned to Victoria. "You are very lucky, Miss Prescott. Another few hours out there and we would be having a very different conversation, or none at all." "I know," Victoria said quietly. "I am aware of the debt I owe Mr. Quinn." "No debt," Marcus said again, more firmly this time. He looked at the doctor. "What do I owe you?" The doctor named a modest sum, and Marcus paid it without hesitation from a worn leather wallet he carried in his vest pocket. Then he turned to Victoria. "I need to get a few supplies from the general store before we head to the ranch. Do you think you can manage a short walk, or should I bring my horse around?" Victoria did not want to be more trouble than she already was. "I can walk." But when she stood, her vision swam, and she would have fallen if Marcus had not caught her. Without a word, he simply scooped her up into his arms, carrying her as though she weighed nothing. "The horse it is," he said, and she heard the hint of gentle amusement in his voice. Too tired to protest, Victoria let her head rest against his shoulder. He smelled of leather and horses and the outdoors, a clean, honest scent that was somehow comforting. He carried her out to his horse, and this time he lifted her into the saddle and mounted behind her in one smooth motion. "The general store is just down the street," he said. "This will only take a few minutes." He was true to his word. He tied the horse outside a well-lit establishment and left Victoria in the saddle while he went inside. She could see him through the window, moving efficiently through the store, gathering items. He returned carrying several packages, which he secured in his saddlebags. Then they were moving again, heading out of town on a road that led east into the darkness. "Tell me about your sister," Victoria said, needing to hear a human voice in the vast darkness of the desert night. "Martha is 24, Marcus said. 3 years older than me. She came west with me 5 years ago after our parents died. She is strong, practical, and she has a good heart. You will like her. And you raise cattle." "I do. It is a modest operation, maybe 200 head, but it is mine. I work it with 2 hired hands, Jack and Samuel. They are good men, honest workers. They bunk in the ranch house with me, but there is a separate cabin where Martha stays. That is where you will be with her." "You have built a good life here," Victoria observed. Marcus was quiet for a moment. "I have built a life," he said finally. Whether it is good remains to be seen. It is honest work, and I answer to no one but myself. That counts for something." Victoria heard something in his voice, a note of loneliness perhaps, or weariness. She wondered about his story, about what had brought him to this harsh land, what dreams he carried. But she was too tired to ask, and soon the rocking motion of the horse and the warmth of Marcus's body behind her lulled her into a light doze. She woke when the horse stopped. Opening her eyes, she saw they had arrived at a collection of buildings clustered around a central yard. The main house was a low, sprawling structure built of adobe and wood, with a covered porch running along the front. A barn stood off to one side, and she could see the shapes of other outbuildings in the darkness. Warm light glowed from the windows of the main house, and as Marcus dismounted and helped Victoria down, the front door opened. A woman stood silhouetted in the doorway, her form backlit by the lamp inside. She was tall and solidly built, wearing a practical dress with an apron tied around her waist. As she stepped onto the porch, Victoria could see her features more clearly. A strong, pleasant face with the same brown eyes as Marcus, framed by dark hair pulled back in a practical bun. "Marcus," the woman called. "You are back later than expected. I was starting to worry." Then she saw Victoria and her expression shifted to concern. "Who is this?" Marcus kept his arm around Victoria's waist, supporting her as they approached the porch. "This is Victoria Prescott. She was stranded at the Crossroads after the stagecoach robbery. Martha, she has had a rough time of it. She needs rest and care." Martha descended the porch steps quickly, her eyes taking in Victoria's condition with a swift, assessing glance. But there was no judgment in her gaze, only compassion. "Of course, bring her inside. The spare room in my cabin is made up." "Actually," Marcus said, "Doc Patterson wants her monitored closely for the next few days. I thought maybe the guest room here in the main house would be better, at least until we are sure she is stable. You could still chaperone, but she would be closer if anything goes wrong." Martha nodded. "That makes sense. Come, let us get you inside, dear." The two of them helped Victoria into the house and through a simply furnished but clean main room, then down a short hallway to a small bedroom. The room held a narrow bed with a simple iron frame, a dresser, a washstand, and a chair. Martha quickly turned down the bed while Marcus lit the lamp on the dresser. "I will heat some broth," Martha said. "She looks like she has not eaten properly in days." "Doc Patterson said small amounts frequent," Marcus reminded her. "I know how to feed someone who is starving, Marcus," Martha said, but her tone was affectionate. She turned to Victoria with a warm smile. "Let me help you out of that dress and into something clean. I have a nightgown that should fit you well enough." Victoria felt tears threaten again at the kindness of these strangers. "You are both so generous. I do not know how to thank you." "No thanks needed," Martha said firmly, echoing her brother. "Now, Marcus, out. Let me help her get settled." Marcus nodded and left the room, closing the door behind him. Martha helped Victoria out of her ruined dress and into a soft cotton nightgown that was slightly too large but wonderfully clean. She helped her sit on the edge of the bed and examined the bandages on her feet with a practiced eye. "My brother did a decent job wrapping these," she observed. "You are in good hands with Marcus. He is a good man, for all that he sometimes forgets that other people exist outside of his cattle and his land." "He saved my life," Victoria said simply. Martha looked up at her, and something warm flickered in her eyes. "Then I am glad he happened along when he did. We do not get many visitors out here, and even fewer who might be good company for me. Most of the women in town are either married to miners or working in the saloons, and neither group has much time for socializing." "How long have you lived here?" Victoria asked. 5 years, since Marcus decided cattle ranching in California was his calling. I came with him because he is my brother, and because there was nothing left for me back in Missouri after our parents passed. Martha smoothed the nightgown around Victoria's legs. It is a hard life out here, but it is ours. That counts for something. She left to prepare the broth, and Victoria lay back on the bed, marveling at the simple comfort of a mattress, clean sheets, a roof overhead. She must have dozed because the next thing she knew, Martha was gently shaking her awake. "Just a little broth," Martha said, helping her sit up and placing pillows behind her back. "Nothing heavy yet, but you need something in your stomach." The broth was simple but flavorful, made with beef and vegetables, and Victoria sipped it slowly, savoring each spoonful. Martha sat in the chair beside the bed, watching to make sure she did not eat too quickly or too much. "Tell me what happened," Martha said gently. "How did you end up stranded at that crossroads?" Victoria found herself telling the whole story. Her father's gambling debts, the arranged marriage to the mine owner, her escape, the stagecoach robbery, being left behind when her shoes fell apart. Martha listened without interruption, her expression growing darker as the tale unfolded. "Your father tried to sell you to pay his debts," Martha said when Victoria had finished, her voice tight with anger. "What kind of man does that to his own daughter?" "A desperate one," Victoria said quietly. "Though that does not excuse it. I could not marry that man. He was cruel, and he looked at me like I was property he was acquiring, so I ran." "You did the right thing," Martha said firmly. "A woman should have a say in who she marries, if she marries at all. You were brave to leave." "I am not sure it was bravery," Victoria said, "more like desperation. And look where it got me, stranded in the desert, dependent on the charity of strangers." "You are alive," Martha pointed out. "And as for the rest, well, we will figure it out. You are welcome here as long as you need, and once you are healed, we will help you determine what comes next." Victoria felt the tears she had been holding back finally spill over. Martha made a soft sound of sympathy and took the empty bowl, setting it aside before gathering Victoria into a gentle hug. "You are safe now," Martha murmured. "Rest and heal. Everything else can wait." And for the first time in longer than she could remember, Victoria felt that it might actually be true. The days that followed passed in a gentle routine that Victoria found deeply healing. She slept long hours, her body recovering from the ordeal it had endured. When she was awake, Martha brought her regular small meals. Broth at first, then soft bread and butter, then gradually more substantial fare. Marcus changed her bandages twice a day as Dr. Patterson had instructed, his touch gentle and impersonal, though Victoria found herself increasingly aware of his presence. The quiet competence in his hands, the concern in his eyes when he checked her wounds for signs of infection. On the third day, Marcus helped her walk the few steps to the chair by the window in her room so she could look out at the ranch, while Martha changed the sheets on the bed. Victoria could see the barn and corrals from this vantage point, the cattle grazing in the distance, the vast expanse of desert beyond. She saw Marcus working with his hired hands, two weather-beaten men who moved with the easy efficiency of experienced cowboys. She watched as they mended fences, worked with the horses, and went about the daily tasks of keeping a ranch running. That afternoon, Marcus drove her back to town in a wagon for her follow-up appointment with Dr. Patterson. Martha came along, sitting in the back of the wagon while Victoria sat up front beside Marcus. The ride was more comfortable than her first journey to the ranch, though her feet still ached. Dr. Patterson examined her thoroughly and pronounced himself satisfied with her progress. "The wounds are healing cleanly, no sign of infection. You can begin walking more, but take it slow. No long distances for at least another week." As they were leaving the doctor's office, a man approached them on the street. He was well dressed by frontier standards, wearing a suit and a bowler hat with a heavy gold watch chain visible across his vest. His face was florid, his eyes sharp and calculating. "Marcus Quinn," the man said, his tone overly friendly. "I have been meaning to speak with you about your ranch." Marcus's expression became carefully neutral. "Mr. Hendricks." "I represent the Silver Peak Mining Company," Hendricks said, as if Marcus did not already know this. "We are still very interested in purchasing your land. The price I quoted you last month still stands, very generous given current market conditions." "And my answer still stands," Marcus said evenly. "The ranch is not for sale." Hendricks's smile became strained. "You are being short-sighted, Quinn. This land has mineral potential. You could take the money, start fresh somewhere else, somewhere with better grazing and more water." "I like it where I am," Marcus said. "Be reasonable," Hendricks pressed. "The mining company will get this land eventually, one way or another. Would not you rather profit from it?" Marcus's jaw tightened, and Victoria saw his hands curl into fists at his sides, but his voice remained steady when he spoke. "Are you threatening me, Hendricks?" "Not at all," Hendricks said smoothly, though his eyes were cold. "Simply stating facts. Mining is the future here. Cattle ranching is dying. You would do well to recognize that and make the smart choice." "I have made my choice," Marcus said. He took Victoria's arm gently. "Now, if you will excuse us, we have matters to attend to." He guided Victoria past Hendricks, with Martha following close behind. Victoria could feel the tension in Marcus's arm, the controlled anger. They climbed into the wagon in silence, and Marcus did not speak until they were well out of town. "That man has been trying to buy my land for 6 months, Marcus said finally, his knuckles white on the reins. "He represents a company that wants to strip mine the whole area. They do not care what they destroy in the process." "Can they force you to sell?" Victoria asked. "Not legally," Marcus said, "but Hendricks is not above using other methods. There have been incidents at other ranches whose owners refuse to sell. Fences cut, cattle poisoned, barns mysteriously catching fire. Nothing that can be proven, but the message is clear." "Marcus," Martha said from the back of the wagon, her voice worried, "you never told me it was that serious." "I did not want you to worry," Marcus said, "and I can handle Hendricks. One man against a mining company," Martha said. "Those are not good odds." "I am not alone," Marcus said. "Jack and Samuel are loyal, and there are other ranchers in the area who are standing firm. We watch out for each other." Victoria thought about the life Marcus had built, the land he clearly loved, the simple honesty of his work. The idea of someone like Hendricks trying to take it through intimidation made her angry on his behalf. "Is there no law here?" she asked. "There is a sheriff," Marcus said, "but he is practical. He knows he cannot take on the mining companies, not when they bring money and employment to the area. As long as no one gets killed, he turns a blind eye to most things." They rode the rest of the way to the ranch in silence, each lost in their own thoughts. But that evening, as Victoria sat at the dinner table for the first time, joining Marcus, Martha, and the 2 ranch hands for the meal, she found herself watching Marcus with new appreciation. He was not just a man who had saved her life. He was a man of principle, someone who stood his ground even when it would have been easier and more profitable to give in. Jack and Samuel were friendly but respectful, clearly curious about Victoria but too polite to ask intrusive questions. Jack was older, probably in his 50s, with a weathered face and kind eyes. Samuel was younger, maybe 30, with a ready smile and an easygoing manner. Both men treated Martha with obvious respect and deference. "Miss Prescott," Jack said during the meal, "Marcus told us what happened to you out there. That is a rough bit of luck. Glad you are recovering well." "Thank you," Victoria said. Everyone here has been very kind." "That is just how Marcus is," Samuel said, grinning at his employer. "Cannot pass by someone who needs help. Remember that time he spent 3 days tracking down old Mrs. Henderson's milk cow that wandered off? That cow was her livelihood," Marcus said, looking faintly embarrassed. "It was the right thing to do." "And the time he gave his winter coat to that prospector who showed up half frozen at the door," Jack added, clearly enjoying Marcus's discomfort. "Can we not recount my entire history of basic human decency over dinner?" Marcus asked, but there was affection in his voice. Martha caught Victoria's eye and smiled. "They are not exaggerating. My brother has a habit of collecting strays, both animal and human." "I am not a stray," Victoria protested, though without heat. "Of course not," Martha said quickly. "I only meant that Marcus cannot help but help people. It is one of his better qualities." Victoria looked at Marcus and found him watching her with an expression she could not quite read. Their eyes held for a moment, and she felt something shift inside her, a flutter of feeling that had nothing to do with gratitude and everything to do with the man himself. She looked away quickly, her cheeks warming. The rest of the meal passed pleasantly, with easy conversation and occasional laughter. It felt like family, Victoria realized, this gathering around the table. She had not felt part of a family since her mother died. The loneliness she had carried for so long eased slightly in the warmth of this simple ranch kitchen. After dinner, Martha insisted Victoria rest while she and the men cleaned up. Marcus walked Victoria to her room, hovering in the doorway as she settled into the chair by the window. "You are fitting in well," he said. "Everyone has been very welcoming," Victoria replied, "more than I had any right to expect." Marcus leaned against the doorframe, his arms crossed over his chest. "Martha is happier than I have seen her in months. She loves the ranch, but she gets lonely. Most of the women in town are not interested in befriending the sister of a stubborn cattle rancher." "Their loss," Victoria said. "Martha is wonderful." Marcus smiled, and Victoria realized it was the first true smile she had seen from him. It transformed his face, softening the hard edges and making him look younger. "She is," he agreed. "I do not know what I would do without her." There was a moment of comfortable silence, then Marcus said, "You have not mentioned any plans, for after you are healed, I mean." Victoria looked out the window at the darkening sky. "I have been trying not to think about it," she admitted. "I have no money, no possessions, nowhere to go. My original plan was to reach Los Angeles and find work, but that seems impossible now." "You could stay here," Marcus said quietly. Victoria turned to look at him in surprise. "What? Stay here," Marcus repeated. "There is plenty of work. Martha could use help with the house and the cooking, and you mentioned you were a seamstress. We all need clothes mended or made. We could pay you wages, room and board. It would give you time to figure out what you want to do next, at least." "I could not," Victoria started, but Marcus held up a hand. "Before you say no, think about it. You are already here, you get along with everyone, and it would solve your immediate problem of having nowhere to go and no money. You would be earning your keep, not accepting charity, and Martha would be thrilled." Victoria wanted to refuse. She had already imposed so much on these people. But the practical side of her recognized the truth in what Marcus was saying. She needed time to recover, to save money, to plan her next move. And she could not deny that she felt comfortable here, that something about this place and these people felt right in a way nothing had in a long time. "Can I think about it?" she asked. "Of course," Marcus said. "There is no rush, but the offer stands." He bid her good night and left, closing the door softly behind him. Victoria sat in the gathering darkness, her mind racing. Stay at the ranch. Work for Marcus and Martha. It was a solution she had not anticipated, but now that it was offered, She found herself wanting to accept more than was perhaps wise. Because somewhere in the last few days, between the bandage changes and the quiet conversations and the simple kindness of this household, she had begun to feel something for Marcus Quinn that went beyond gratitude. She noticed the strength in his hands, the gentleness in his touch. She appreciated the way he spoke to her as an equal, never patronizing or dismissive. She admired his principles, his willingness to stand up to men like Hendricks even at personal cost, and if she stayed, she would be near him. She would see him every day, share meals with him, work alongside his sister. It was both appealing and terrifying. She had run from one arrangement that would have trapped her in a loveless marriage. Was she now walking into something equally complicated, developing feelings for a man who might not return them, who might see her as nothing more than a woman he had helped? But even as she questioned it, Victoria knew what her answer would be. She would stay, at least for a while. Not just because it was practical, though it was, but because something in her wanted to know Marcus Quinn better, wanted to see if this fragile connection between them might grow into something more. The next morning, she told Martha her decision over breakfast. Martha's face lit up with genuine joy. "Oh, that is wonderful news," Martha exclaimed. "I cannot tell you how happy I am. It will be so good to have another woman around, someone to talk to and share the work with." Marcus, who was sitting at the table mending a piece of tack, looked up with a smile. "I am glad you are staying," he said simply, and the warmth in his voice made Victoria's heart beat faster. The following weeks fell into a comfortable routine. As Victoria's feet healed, she began taking on more and more of the household tasks. She and Martha worked together, cooking meals, cleaning, doing laundry, tending the small vegetable garden Martha had managed to coax from the harsh soil. Victoria also set up a sewing area in the corner of the main room and began mending the vast pile of clothes that Martha had been accumulating, waiting for someone with the skill and time to deal with them. She discovered she liked ranch life. There was something satisfying about the honest work, the tangible results of her efforts. She liked the rhythm of the days, the quiet evenings when they would all gather in the main room, Martha knitting, Victoria sewing, Marcus reading or reviewing his account books, Jack and Samuel playing cards or checkers. She liked listening to the men talk about the cattle, the range conditions, the plans for next season. She liked the rare occasions when Marcus would share stories about his life before the ranch, about growing up in Missouri, about the journey west with Martha. She learned that he was 24, that he had worked various jobs before saving enough to buy this land, that he dreamed of building the ranch into something substantial, something he could be proud of. And she liked Marcus himself more with each passing day. She noticed small things about him. The way he was always gentle with the animals, patient with the horses even when they were being difficult. The way he listened when people spoke, giving them his full attention. The way he treated Martha with respect and affection, never taking her work for granted. The way he was fair with Jack and Samuel, working alongside them rather than standing back and simply giving orders. Victoria found her eyes following him when he worked in the yard, admiring the easy strength in his movements, the competence in everything he did. She found herself looking forward to the evenings when they would all gather together, treasuring the moments when Marcus would sit near her, when their hands would accidentally brush as they passed items at the dinner table, when he would ask her opinion on something and actually listen to her answer. She thought she caught him watching her sometimes, too, his dark eyes thoughtful. But he never said anything, never acted on whatever he might be feeling. Victoria told herself it was for the best. She was an employee, a guest in his home. It would be inappropriate for either of them to pursue anything more. But telling herself that did not stop the longing that grew inside her, the wish that he might see her as something more than a woman he had rescued. 2 months after Victoria arrived at the ranch, Hendricks showed up again. Victoria was hanging laundry with Martha when they saw the buggy approaching, raising a plume of dust in the afternoon sun. Marcus was out on the range with Jack and Samuel, checking on the herd. Hendricks pulled up to the house and climbed down from the buggy, his expression annoyed when he saw only women present. "Where is Quinn?" he demanded without preamble. "He is working," Martha said coolly. "What do you want, Mr. Hendricks?" "I want to speak with your brother about his continued refusal to be reasonable," Hendricks said. "The mining company is prepared to make a final offer. If he refuses again, there will be consequences." "Are you threatening us?" Victoria asked, stepping forward. She had heard enough about Hendricks from Marcus to dislike the man intensely. Hendricks looked at her dismissively. "And who are you?" "Someone who is tired of bullies trying to intimidate good people into giving up what is theirs," Victoria said, surprising herself with her boldness. Hendricks's eyes narrowed. "The mining company owns most of the land in this valley now. Quinn's ranch is an island in our territory. He cannot hold out forever. The sooner he accepts that, the better for everyone." "The sooner you accept that some things are not for sale, the better for you," Martha said firmly. "Now get off our land, Mr. Hendricks. You are not welcome here." Hendricks's face flushed with anger. "You will regret this," he said. "Both of you. Tell your brother he is making a very big mistake." He climbed back into his buggy and drove away, the wheels kicking up angry clouds of dust. Martha and Victoria stood watching until he was out of sight, then looked at each other. "We need to tell Marcus," Martha said, her voice worried. When Marcus returned that evening, they related the encounter. His expression grew grim as he listened. "He is escalating," Marcus said. "I was afraid of this. He has been quiet for too long." "What will you do?" Victoria asked. "What I have been doing," Marcus said. "Stand my ground. This is my land, legally purchased. He has no right to it." "But if he tries something," Martha started. "Then I will deal with it," Marcus said firmly. "I will not be run off my own ranch by threats." That night, Marcus asked Jack and Samuel to start taking turns keeping watch. "Nothing might happen," he said, "but it was better to be cautious." The 2 men agreed readily, and a rotation was established. For several days, nothing happened. Then, one night, Victoria woke to shouting. She scrambled out of bed, grabbing a shawl and rushing to the window. In the yard, she could see flames. The barn was on fire. She ran from her room and nearly collided with Martha in the hallway. Together they rushed outside to find Marcus, Jack, and Samuel already working to fight the fire. A bucket line had been formed from the well, and the men were throwing water on the flames. "Get more buckets," Marcus shouted when he saw them, "and soak the roof of the house. If the fire spreads, we will lose everything." Victoria and Martha ran to obey, grabbing every container they could find and filling them with water. They focused on wetting down the house and the other outbuildings, trying to create a barrier between them and the burning barn. The heat was intense, the smoke choking. Victoria's eyes stung and her lungs burned, but she kept working. It took hours to get the fire under control. By the time the flames were finally extinguished, the barn was a total loss, reduced to smoldering timbers and ash. But the house and other buildings had been saved, and more importantly, the horses had been gotten out safely. The cattle had been far enough away to be in no danger. As dawn broke, they all stood exhausted in the yard, covered in soot and sweat, surveying the damage. Marcus's face was hard as stone. "This was arson," he said flatly. "The fire started in 3 different places simultaneously. Samuel saw someone riding away as he was coming to check on things. "Hendricks," Martha said. "Hendricks," Marcus agreed. "Or someone he hired." "Now what?" Jack asked. Marcus was quiet for a long moment. "Now I go to town and report it to the sheriff, for all the good that will do, and then we rebuild. I will not give up my ranch because some mining company wants it." Victoria moved to stand beside him, and without thinking, she put her hand on his arm. "We will help," she said. "All of us. We will rebuild together." Marcus looked down at her hand on his arm, then up at her face. Something shifted in his expression, something warm and grateful and more. "Thank you," he said quietly. The next few weeks were a flurry of activity. Marcus went to the sheriff as planned, but as expected, the man said there was nothing he could do without proof. Hendricks, when confronted, denied any involvement, expressing false sympathy for Marcus's loss while barely hiding his satisfaction. But Marcus did not waver. With the help of Jack, Samuel, Martha, and Victoria, he began rebuilding. They salvaged what they could from the burned barn and purchased new lumber with money Marcus had been saving for other improvements. Every day was filled with hard physical labor. Victoria learned to swing a hammer, to hold boards in place while the men nailed them, to measure and cut when needed. Working side by side with Marcus, she felt the connection between them strengthen. There were moments when their hands would touch as they worked, when their eyes would meet and hold longer than necessary, when she would catch him watching her with an expression that made her breath catch. But still, neither of them spoke of it. One evening, as the new barn was nearing completion, Marcus found Victoria sitting on the porch alone. Martha had gone to bed early with a headache, and Jack and Samuel had ridden into town for supplies. They would not be back until morning. "Mind if I join you?" Marcus asked. "Please," Victoria said, moving over on the step to make room for him. He sat beside her, close enough that their shoulders almost touched. For a while they sat in comfortable silence, watching the stars appear one by one in the darkening sky. "I never properly thanked you," Marcus said finally. "For staying, for helping with all of this. You did not have to." "Yes, I did," Victoria said. "You saved my life, Marcus. The least I could do was help you save your barn." "It is more than that," Marcus said. "You have become part of this place, part of what makes it home." "I do not know what we would do without you now." Victoria felt her heart beating faster. "I do not know what I would do without this place either," she admitted. "Without all of you, I have been happier here these past months than I have been in years, maybe ever." Marcus turned to look at her, and in the fading light his eyes were dark and intense. "Victoria, I need to tell you something. I have been trying to respect your position here, trying to be proper, but I cannot keep it to myself any longer." "What is it?" Victoria whispered. "I have feelings for you," Marcus said, the words coming out in a rush. "I have for weeks now, maybe from the beginning. I think about you constantly. I find excuses to be near you. I watch for you, listen for your voice. You have become essential to me in ways that have nothing to do with gratitude or household help." Victoria felt tears spring to her eyes. "Marcus, I feel the same way. I have been so afraid to hope that you might see me as anything more than someone you helped, someone you felt obligated to." "God, no," Marcus said. He reached out and took her hand, his calloused fingers gentle around hers. "Victoria, you are so much more than that. You are brave and strong and kind. You work harder than anyone I have ever known. You make me laugh. You make me want to be better. You make this house feel like a home in ways it never did before." "I love you," Victoria said, the words spilling out before she could stop them. "I did not mean to. I tried not to, but I love you, Marcus Quinn." Marcus made a sound that was half laugh, half sob. He pulled her close, wrapping his arms around her, and Victoria went willingly, burying her face against his chest. She could hear his heart pounding as fast as her own. "I love you too," Marcus said into her hair. "I love you so much it terrifies me. Victoria, I know this is fast. I know we have only known each other a few months, but I do not want to wait. I do not want to waste time. Life is too uncertain, too short. I want you by my side, not as an employee or a guest, but as my wife. Will you marry me?" Victoria pulled back to look up at him, tears streaming down her face. "Yes," she said. "Yes, Marcus, I will marry you." He cupped her face in his hands and kissed her, a gentle, reverent kiss that held all the longing and love they had been holding back. Victoria kissed him back, her arms winding around his neck, and for a moment the whole world narrowed to just the two of them. This man and this woman who had found each other at a crossroads in the desert. When they finally broke apart, both breathless, Marcus rested his forehead against hers. "I will make you happy," he promised. "I will spend every day of my life trying to make you as happy as you have made me." "You already do," Victoria assured him. "You already do." They were married 2 weeks later in Panamint, in a simple ceremony performed by the traveling circuit judge who passed through town once a month. Martha stood up with Victoria, beaming with joy. Jack and Samuel served as witnesses, both men grinning broadly. Dr. Patterson attended, looking satisfied that his patient had recovered so thoroughly. Even a few of the townsfolk showed up, curious about the woman Marcus Quinn had rescued and was now marrying. Hendricks was conspicuously absent, though Victoria heard rumors that he was not pleased about the wedding. Marcus marrying made his claim to the land even stronger, especially if they had children who would inherit. But Victoria refused to let thoughts of Hendricks spoil her wedding day. She wore a simple dress that Martha had helped her make, white cotton with lace at the collar and cuffs. She had no family present, but looking around at Martha, Jack, Samuel, and the other friendly faces, she realized she did have family. She had found it here in this harsh land with these good people. And most of all, she had Marcus. He stood beside her in his best clothes, his hair neatly combed, his face serious as he spoke his vows. When the judge pronounced them husband and wife, Marcus kissed her with a tenderness that made Victoria's heart soar. They had a simple celebration back at the ranch, with food Martha had prepared and a cake Victoria had made. Jack brought out a fiddle Victoria had not known he could play, and Samuel proved to have a fine singing voice. They danced in the yard as the sun set, Marcus holding Victoria close, whispering words of love in her ear. That night, Martha discreetly moved her things into the cabin she had been using, leaving the main house to the newlyweds. Marcus carried Victoria over the threshold of his room, their room now, and set her down gently beside the bed. "Are you happy?" he asked, searching her face in the lamplight. "Happier than I ever dreamed possible," Victoria said honestly. She reached up to touch his face, tracing the line of his jaw. "A few months ago I was dying at a crossroads. Now I am married to the man I love with a home and a family. How did I get so lucky?" "I am the lucky one," Marcus said. He captured her hand and kissed her palm. "I found you at that crossroads, but you found me too. You brought light and warmth and love into my life. You made me realize that building a ranch is not enough. I need someone to build a life with." "You have me," Victoria said. "For the rest of our lives, you have me." They came together then, expressing their love in the most intimate way, learning each other's bodies, giving and receiving pleasure with tender care. Victoria had been afraid of her wedding night, the memories of her intended's cruel hand still vivid. But with Marcus, there was no fear. He was gentle and patient, making sure she was comfortable, that she wanted each step before proceeding. Their union was beautiful, and when they finally lay tangled together afterward, both breathless and satisfied, Victoria felt complete in a way she had never experienced before. In the months that followed, Victoria settled fully into her role as Marcus's wife and the lady of the ranch. She and Martha became closer than sisters, sharing the work and the companionship. The new barn was completed, and the ranch continued its operations smoothly. Hendricks made a few more attempts to pressure Marcus into selling, but his efforts became increasingly half-hearted. The fire had been his boldest move, and when it failed to drive Marcus away, he seemed to realize that the stubborn rancher was not going to budge. Eventually, the mining company turned its attention elsewhere, and the pressure on Marcus's ranch eased. Life fell into a peaceful, productive rhythm. The cattle thrived, the ranch prospered, and the house rang with laughter and love. A year after their wedding, Victoria discovered she was pregnant. She told Marcus one evening after dinner, taking his hand and placing it on her still flat belly. "We are going to have a baby," she said softly. Marcus's face went through a series of expressions: shock, joy, wonder, and finally a fierce protective love. "A baby," he repeated. "We are going to be parents." "Are you happy?" Victoria asked, suddenly nervous. "Happy." Marcus pulled her into his arms, holding her tight. "Victoria, I am beyond happy. I am blessed. A child, our child. You have given me so much already, and now this." Martha cried happy tears when they told her, immediately beginning to plan and prepare. Jack and Samuel congratulated Marcus with hearty backslaps and jokes about sleepless nights. Dr. Patterson examined Victoria and pronounced her healthy and strong, predicting an uncomplicated pregnancy. As Victoria's belly grew, Marcus became even more attentive and protective. He tried to keep her from doing heavy work, though Victoria insisted she was perfectly capable. They compromised, with Victoria focusing on lighter tasks and letting Martha and the men handle the more strenuous chores. In the quiet evenings, Marcus would sit with Victoria, his hand on her belly, feeling their baby move. They talked about names, about the future, about the kind of parents they wanted to be. "Boy or girl, it does not matter," Marcus said one night. "As long as the baby is healthy and you are safe." "I am not worried," Victoria said. "I am strong and I have you. We will be fine." On a warm September afternoon, 7 months after their first anniversary, Victoria went into labor. Martha sent Samuel riding for Dr. Patterson while she and Jack helped Victoria into bed. Marcus was out on the range, and by the time he got the message and raced back to the house, Victoria was well into her labor. He burst into the bedroom, wild-eyed and terrified. Martha shooed him out, saying he was more hindrance than help, but Victoria called him back. "Stay," she said, reaching for his hand. "I want you here." So Marcus stayed, holding Victoria's hand, wiping her forehead with a cool cloth, murmuring encouragement even as she squeezed his hand hard enough to hurt during the contractions. Dr. Patterson arrived and took charge, his calm competence steadying everyone. The labor was long and difficult, stretching through the afternoon and into the night. Victoria was exhausted, drenched in sweat, but she did not complain. She focused on the task at hand, on bringing their child safely into the world. Finally, as the first light of dawn was breaking over the desert, the baby arrived. A boy, red-faced and squalling, with a full head of dark hair and his father's eyes. "You have a son," Dr. Patterson said, placing the cleaned and wrapped baby in Victoria's arms. Marcus looked down at his wife and child, and Victoria saw tears streaming down his face. "He is perfect," Marcus whispered. "You are perfect. Thank you, Victoria. Thank you for this gift." They named him Michael, after Marcus's father. Little Michael was a healthy, hungry baby who quickly became the center of the household. Martha doted on him. Jack and Samuel vied to see who could make him laugh first, and Marcus was completely besotted, spending every free moment with his son. Victoria recovered quickly from the birth, and she took to motherhood with the same determination and grace she brought to everything else. She loved her son fiercely, but she also made sure to maintain her partnership with Marcus, to keep their relationship strong. Martha helped with the baby, giving Victoria and Marcus time alone together, time to nurture their marriage. 2 years later, their daughter was born. They named her Rebecca, after Victoria's mother. She had her mother's green eyes and her father's stubborn chin. Where Michael was serious and thoughtful, Rebecca was all energy and mischief, keeping the household on its toes. The ranch continued to prosper. Marcus expanded the herd, bought more land, built a new barn even larger than the one that had burned. Jack eventually married a widow from town and brought her to live in a small house Marcus built for them on ranch property. Samuel met a schoolteacher and followed suit a year later. The ranch became a small community, several families working together, looking out for each other. Victoria's father wrote to her once, years after she had left. The letter found her through a series of forwarded addresses. He claimed to be sorry to have reformed to want to reconcile. Victoria showed the letter to Marcus, and they discussed it at length. In the end, Victoria wrote back a polite but firm response. She wished him well, but she had made a new life, a better life, and she had no desire to reconnect with the man who had tried to sell her like property. She had everything she needed right here: a husband who loved her, children who filled her days with joy, a home that was truly hers, and work that gave her purpose. She had come to that crossroads barefoot and starving, with nothing but desperation driving her forward. Marcus had given her boots that day, but he had given her so much more than that. He had given her a future, a family, a love that grew stronger with each passing year. On their 10th anniversary, Marcus surprised Victoria with a gift. He had saved for months, working extra to put aside the money. He presented her with a beautiful pair of custom-made boots, made of soft leather and embroidered with flowers. "These are to replace the ones I gave you that first day," Marcus said. "Though honestly, I am glad those old boots fell apart. Otherwise, I might never have met you." Victoria laughed, tears in her eyes as she held the beautiful boots. "I think about that day sometimes," she admitted. "About how close I came to dying out there, about how you appeared exactly when I needed you most." "I think about it too," Marcus said. He pulled her close, kissing her forehead. "Best day of my life, finding you at that crossroads. Everything good in my life stems from that moment." "Not everything," Victoria protested. "You had already built so much." "I had built a ranch," Marcus corrected, "but you helped me build a home. You gave me children, love, a reason for everything I do. The ranch would be nothing without you in it." Victoria kissed him, putting all her love into it. After 10 years, the passion between them had not dimmed. If anything, it had grown stronger, tempered by the trials they had faced together, the joys they had shared. Michael was now 9 years old, already helping with ranch work, learning from his father. Rebecca was 7, wild as the wind but with a good heart. There were rumors that a new baby might be on the way, though Victoria had not yet confirmed her suspicions. The town of Panamint had changed over the years. The mining boom had peaked and started to decline as the richest veins were exhausted. Some people moved away, seeking fortune elsewhere. But others, like Marcus and Victoria, had put down roots too deep to tear up. They stayed, adapting as the economy shifted from mining to ranching and farming. Hendricks had left years ago, following the mining company to greener pastures. New people came, good people who worked hard and contributed to the community. Victoria had become friends with several women in town, forming a social circle that met regularly to sew, talk, and support each other. The ranch itself had become one of the most successful in the region. Marcus's stubbornness in refusing to sell to the mining company had paid off. While other ranchers who sold out had spent their money and ended up with nothing, Marcus still had his land, his cattle, and a thriving operation to pass on to his children. As Victoria sat on the porch one evening, watching the sunset paint the desert in shades of gold and crimson, she reflected on the journey that had brought her here. From the desperate girl at the crossroads to the contented woman she was now, it seemed like multiple lifetimes had passed. But it had only been a decade in which she had found everything she had ever wanted and things she had not even known to dream of. Marcus came to sit beside her, as he often did in the evenings when the work was done and the children were in bed. He took her hand, lacing their fingers together, and they sat in comfortable silence, watching their world settle into night. "What are you thinking about?" Marcus asked after a while. "How grateful I am," Victoria said simply. "For you, for our life, for everything we have built together." "I am the grateful one," Marcus said, squeezing her hand. "You took a chance on a rough cowboy with more dreams than sense. You helped me build something worth having." "We built it together," Victoria corrected. "Everything we have, we created as partners." Marcus pulled her close, and Victoria rested her head on his shoulder, breathing in the familiar scent of him, the comfort of his presence. Tomorrow would bring its own challenges and joys. There would be cattle to tend, children to raise, a ranch to run. But tonight, in this moment, everything was perfect. A year later, Victoria gave birth to their third child, another son they named Daniel. He was a happy baby, easy and content, and he completed their family in a way that felt right. Michael, now 10, was a natural horseman and showed every sign of following in his father's footsteps. Rebecca, at 8, had revealed a talent for drawing and spent hours sketching the animals and landscape around the ranch. And little Daniel brought joy simply by existing, his gummy smiles and happy gurgles brightening even the hardest days. The ranch continued to thrive. Marcus had become a respected voice in the regional cattle industry, known for his fair dealing and quality stock. Victoria had expanded her seamstress work, taking commissions from women throughout the area who appreciated her skill. Between the ranch income and her sewing, they were more financially secure than they had ever dreamed. Martha, now in her 30s, had surprised everyone by falling in love with a widower from town, a merchant named Thomas who treated her like a queen. They married in a simple ceremony, and though Martha moved to town to live with her new husband, she visited the ranch often, unable to stay away from her brother and his family for long. Jack and Samuel had become integral parts of the ranch family. Their children played with Marcus and Victoria's children, and the bonds between the families grew strong. They celebrated holidays together, helped each other through difficulties, and shared in each other's successes. Time passed in the way it does when life is full and happy. Seasons cycled, children grew, and the rhythm of ranch life continued. There were hard times, drought years when water was scarce and the cattle suffered, a particularly harsh winter that tested their resources, illnesses and injuries that reminded them of life's fragility. But they faced everything together, drawing strength from each other and the community they had built. On Victoria's 30th birthday, Marcus threw a celebration at the ranch. Friends and neighbors came from miles around. Tables were set up in the yard, laden with food. Children ran and played while adults talked and laughed. As Victoria looked around at the gathering, at the life she and Marcus had created, she felt overwhelmed with emotion. Marcus found her standing alone for a moment, watching the festivities with tears in her eyes. "What is wrong?" he asked, immediately concerned. "Nothing is wrong," Victoria assured him. "I am just happy. Sometimes the happiness is so big it overflows. Marcus understood. He wrapped his arms around her from behind, resting his chin on her shoulder. "I know what you mean," he said. "Sometimes I look at what we have, at you and our children and this ranch, and I can hardly believe it is real." "It is real," Victoria said, turning in his arms to face him. "We made it real. We took a chance on each other and we built something beautiful." "The best decision I ever made," Marcus said, "was to stop at that crossroads." "The best decision I ever made," Victoria countered, "was to accept your help, to trust you." They kissed, right there in the middle of the party, not caring who saw. Their children made exaggerated sounds of disgust, but Victoria could see the smiles on their faces. Michael, Rebecca, and Daniel were growing up in a home filled with love, seeing every day what a strong, loving partnership looked like. Whatever paths they chose in life, they would carry that example with them. As the sun set on Victoria's birthday celebration, the party moved indoors. Someone had brought a guitar and music filled the house. People danced, told stories, and enjoyed each other's company. Victoria found herself dancing with Marcus, moving to a slow song while their friends and family watched with affectionate smiles. "Happy birthday, my love," Marcus murmured as they swayed together. "The happiest," Victoria agreed. "Every year with you is a gift." The years continued to unfold, each one bringing new challenges and new joys. Michael grew into a fine young man, taking on more responsibility at the ranch until he was effectively Marcus's partner in running it. Rebecca's talent for art developed, and she began selling her drawings to stores in town and beyond, making a name for herself. Daniel, the youngest, proved to have a head for numbers and business, eventually taking over the financial management of the ranch with a skill that freed Marcus to focus on the aspects he loved most. Victoria watched her children grow with pride and a touch of wistfulness. They were becoming independent, preparing to make their own way in the world. Michael had begun courting the daughter of a neighboring rancher, a sensible girl named Anna who clearly adored him. Victoria could see a wedding in their near future, and probably grandchildren not long after. The thought of becoming a grandmother made her laugh. She was only in her mid-30s, still young and energetic. But she looked forward to it nonetheless, to the chance to spoil grandchildren, the way she had not allowed herself to spoil her own children, always conscious of the need to raise them to be hardworking and grounded. Marcus, now in his late 30s, had matured into his role as a rancher and community leader. His hair was starting to show threads of gray at the temples, and the lines around his eyes had deepened from years of squinting into the sun. But to Victoria, he was as handsome as the day she had first seen him riding toward her at that crossroads. More so, actually, because she knew his heart now, knew the depth of his character and the strength of his love. They still made time for each other, stealing moments alone when they could. Sometimes they would ride out together to a favorite spot on the ranch, a rise where they could see for miles in every direction. They would sit together, talking or simply enjoying the silence, reconnected to each other away from the demands of children and work. On one such afternoon, sitting on a blanket under the shade of a rare tree, Marcus said, "Do you ever regret it? Running away, ending up here?" Victoria looked at him in surprise. "Regret it? Not for a single moment. Do you regret stopping to help a stranger?" "Never," Marcus said firmly. "You are the best thing that ever happened to me. I just wonder sometimes if you miss your old life, if you wish things had been different." "My old life was preparing me for this one," Victoria said thoughtfully. "The hardships I faced made me appreciate what we have. The loneliness I felt made me value our family. The fear I experienced makes me grateful for the safety and security we have built. If I could go back and change things, I would not." because any change might mean I never ended up at that crossroads, never met you." Marcus kissed her then, deep and passionate, and they spent the afternoon reconnecting in all the ways that mattered. When they finally returned to the ranch house as the sun was setting, their children looked at them with knowing smiles but said nothing. They were old enough to understand and respect that their parents had a relationship beyond being mother and father. Michael married Anna the following spring in a wedding even bigger than Marcus and Victoria's had been. The ranch was full of guests, and the celebration lasted 2 days. Marcus built a house for the newlyweds on ranch property, not far from the main house, so Michael could continue working the ranch while starting his own family. A year later, Victoria held her first grandchild, a boy named Marcus after his grandfather. The joy she felt looking into that tiny face was almost overwhelming. Marcus stood beside her, his arm around her shoulders, both of them marveling at this new generation. "We started a legacy," Marcus said softly. "Our grandchildren and great-grandchildren will live on this land, carry on what we built." "It is a good legacy," Victoria said. "Built on love and hard work and determination. I could not ask for better." Time moved on. Rebecca eventually moved to San Francisco to pursue her art, though she visited regularly and always considered the ranch her true home. Daniel went to university to study business, returning to apply his knowledge to not only the family ranch, but to several other business ventures in the region. All 3 of Victoria and Marcus's children thrived, making their parents proud. More grandchildren followed, filling the ranch with new life and energy. Victoria and Marcus transitioned gradually into the role of elders, still active and engaged but allowing the next generation to take the lead. Michael proved to be as skilled a rancher as his father, perhaps even better. He expanded operations, introduced new techniques, and ensured the ranch remained prosperous even as the West continued to change and modernize. Victoria and Marcus spent more time together, rediscovering the simple pleasure of each other's company without the constant demands of young children and a growing operation. They traveled occasionally, visiting Rebecca in San Francisco, touring other parts of California they had never seen. But they always came back to the ranch, to the land that had brought them together and the home they had built. On their 25th anniversary, their children and grandchildren threw a huge celebration. Friends and neighbors from decades of life in California attended. There were speeches and toasts, memories shared, and laughter filling the house. Marcus and Victoria sat at the head of the table, holding hands, smiling at the life they had created. 25 years, Marcus said during his toast. 25 years ago, I was a stubborn cowboy with a struggling ranch and no one to share it with. Then I found Victoria at a crossroads, and everything changed. She brought love and joy and purpose into my life. She gave me children and grandchildren. She made a house into a home and turned a ranch into a legacy. Victoria, my love, my partner, my best friend, thank you for saying yes all those years ago. Thank you for every day since." Victoria wiped tears from her eyes as everyone applauded. When it was her turn to speak, she stood, Marcus rising beside her, his hand in hers. "When I sat at that crossroads 25 years ago," Victoria said, her voice strong despite the emotion, "I thought my life was over. I had nothing, no shoes, no food, no water, no hope. Then Marcus rode up and gave me all of those things. But more than boots and water and a future, he gave me love. He gave me a chance to be part of something bigger than myself. He gave me a family and a home and a purpose. These 25 years have been the best of my life, and I look forward to 25 more, and 25 after that if we are blessed enough to have them." They kissed as their family and friends cheered, and in that moment, Victoria felt the fullness of her life, the completeness of it. She had come so far from that desperate girl at the crossroads. She had become a wife, a mother, a grandmother, a successful businesswoman, and a pillar of her community. But most importantly, she had become loved and had loved in return, deeply and truly. The years continued their gentle march. Victoria and Marcus both lived to see their great-grandchildren, tiny replicas of their own children and grandchildren. The ranch passed fully into Michael's hands, though Marcus remained involved as long as he was able, offering advice and wisdom when asked. Victoria's seamstress business had long since transitioned into more of a hobby, but she still sewed, making quilts for each new grandchild and great-grandchild, each one a labor of love stitched with memories and prayers for the future. On their 40th anniversary, Victoria and Marcus renewed their vows in a small, intimate ceremony attended only by their immediate family. Both were in their 60s now, their hair gray, their faces lined with the years. But they held hands with the same tenderness as on their wedding day, spoke their vows with the same conviction, and kissed with a passion that time had not diminished. That evening, sitting together on the porch of the ranch house as they had done countless times over the decades, Marcus said, "You know, we have had a good life." "The best life," Victoria agreed. "No regrets?" Marcus asked. "Only that we cannot live it all over again," Victoria said with a smile. "But then we have our memories, and our children and grandchildren carry us forward. That is a kind of immortality, is it not?" "It is," Marcus agreed. He was quiet for a moment, then said, "I love you, Victoria Quinn. I have loved you every day of our marriage, and I will love you beyond the end of my days." "I love you too, Marcus," Victoria said. "Thank you for stopping at that crossroads. Thank you for giving me boots and a future and a love story worth living." They sat together as the stars came out, the desert night settling around them with familiar comfort. Inside the house, they could hear the sounds of family, grandchildren laughing, their son Michael discussing the next day's work with his sons, the clatter of dishes being washed. It was the sound of life continuing, of the legacy they had built together. Victoria and Marcus lived well into their 70s, both remaining active and engaged with the ranch and their family until near the end. When Marcus finally passed away peacefully in his sleep at the age of 76, Victoria grieved deeply, but without despair. They had been blessed with 53 years of marriage, longer than most couples could hope for. She had his children, his grandchildren, his great-grandchildren, all living testimonies to the love they had shared. Victoria lived another 5 years after Marcus's death, spending her remaining time surrounded by family, telling stories of the old days, passing on wisdom and love to the younger generations. She remained sharp and engaged until the very end, her spirit as strong as the young woman who had refused to give up even when dying of thirst at a desert crossroads. When Victoria passed away peacefully at the age of 80, surrounded by 3 generations of family, her last words were about Marcus. "Tell him I am coming," she whispered to her granddaughter who sat holding her hand. "Tell him to wait for me at the crossroads. We will find each other again." She was buried next to Marcus on a rise overlooking the ranch, under a tree they had planted together 40 years earlier. The grave markers were simple but elegant, inscribed with their names and dates in a single line. "Together forever, from the crossroads to eternity." The ranch continued under Michael's guidance, and eventually his children's after him. The Quinn Ranch became a landmark in the region, known for its quality cattle and its history. Victoria and Marcus's story became a family legend, told and retold to each new generation. How Marcus had found Victoria barefoot and starving at a crossroads, how he had given her boots and a future, and how that chance encounter had blossomed into a love story that spanned more than 5 decades and created a legacy that would last long after both of them were gone. Their great-great-grandchildren still lived on the land they had built together, still worked the ranch that Marcus had refused to sell despite pressure and intimidation, still carried the values of hard work, integrity, and love that Victoria and Marcus had instilled in their children. The boots Marcus had given Victoria on that first day, carefully preserved, sat in a place of honor in the ranch house, a reminder of where it all began. And sometimes, on quiet desert evenings when the sun painted the sky in shades of gold and crimson, ranch hands swore they could see 2 figures standing together on the rise where Victoria and Marcus were buried, holding hands and looking out over the land they had loved. Whether it was real or just a trick of the light and wishful thinking, no one could say for certain. But everyone agreed that if any love was strong enough to transcend death, it was the love between the cowboy, who had given everything, and the woman who had accepted his gift and given him everything in return. Their story became more than just family history. It became a reminder that sometimes, at the darkest crossroads of our lives, salvation can appear in unexpected forms. That kindness can change the course of a life. That love, when given freely and nurtured carefully, can create something that lasts far beyond a single lifetime. Victoria and Marcus Quinn had started with nothing but each other and built an empire of love, family, and legacy. They had faced challenges together and triumphed. They had raised children who raised children who raised children, each generation carrying forward the best parts of the couple who had started it all at a dusty crossroads in the California desert in 1883. It was, by any measure, a life well lived and a love story for the ages. From barefoot and starving to beloved matriarch, from struggling cowboy to respected patriarch, they had transformed not just their own lives but the lives of everyone they touched. And at the heart of it all was that single moment of decision when Marcus Quinn chose to stop and help a stranger, and Victoria Prescott chose to trust him. Everything else flowed from that moment. The love, the family, the ranch, the legacy. One moment, one choice, and everything changed. It was the best kind of love story, the kind that starts with kindness, grows through partnership, and endures beyond death itself. The kind of story that reminds us that sometimes, even at our lowest points, hope is just around the corner, riding toward us with boots in hand and love in its heart. And in the end, that is what Victoria and Marcus gave to their family and to everyone who heard their story. Hope. Hope that love exists. Hope that kindness matters. Hope that even when we find ourselves barefoot and starving at a crossroads, salvation might be riding toward us, ready to offer not just aid for the moment but partnership for a lifetime. Their story lived on, told and retold, adapted and embellished perhaps, but always true in its essence. At a crossroads in the desert, a cowboy gave a woman boots and a future, and she gave him love and a home, and together they built something that would last forever.